MAGA policies are failures, complete failures, and you can look at red states to see exactly how Trump's nefarious plans are going to play out nationally. Specifically, let's focus on the state that we film this podcast in, Oklahoma. And everybody knows we have this nut superintendent of school named Ryan Walters. And he came out a couple of weeks ago saying that they were going to teach that the big lie, that the 2020 election had discrepancies in it, which is a lie. There was zero discrepancies in the results. He since has decided to out crazy himself and has gone even further. And let's look at this headline. Oklahoma high schools to teach 2020 election conspiracy theories as fact. So he's gone from discrepancies to facts. State Superintendent Ryan Walters tapped Chief of Heritage Foundation, key player behind Project 2025 for curriculum. And here's an excerpt from this article. The previous standard for studying the 2020 election merely said examine issues related to the election of 2020 and its outcome. That's crazy. That's bananas enough. The article goes on to say the new version is more expansive. Identify discrepancies in 2020 election results by looking at graphs and other information, including the sudden halting of ballot counting in select cities and key battleground states, the security risks of mail-in balloting, sudden batch dumps, an unforeseen record number of voters, and the unprecedented contradiction of, quote, bellwether county trends. Okay, all of this that is mentioned here that Ryan Walters wants to do is all a lie. And he speaks ad nauseum about in Oklahoma, we're not going to indoctrinate our kids. We're going to put our foot down to the woke agenda. There's no woke agenda in Oklahoma. It's the buckle of the Bible Belt. What this is indoctrinating kids to not believe in free and fair elections. They are trying to brainwash a future voting electorate to accept false results. Other countries they do this in are Hungary, Russia. So this is exactly what mega churches do. They try to get kids to get saved at 6 or 7 so they have a lifelong customer so the mega church pastor can continue to accumulate wealth. In this instance, this is building up for the authoritarian regime by dumbing down and dismantling the strength that we had in free and fair elections. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the courts, even Trump-appointed judges, over 60 times have proven that the results of 2020 election, all roads lead that Donald Trump lost.
Ryan Walters is the perfect example of being crazy, ambitious, organized, and a religious zealot. He is the perfect microcosm of all the things that are ruining this country and democracy because he believes he knows better. And there's no one that has their hand up and wants to be in the Trump administration more than Ryan Walters. And education of the children of Oklahoma is his least priority in everything he does.
And something super important to talk about Oklahoma is that in 1995, the city of Oklahoma City fell prey to domestic terrorism from right-wing extremists. They blew up the federal building which had a daycare center in front of it. And these little kids died. And there was this iconic photograph of a fireman carrying out like a toddler's body that was dead, that had been blown up by anti-government right-wing extremists. Fast forward to now, in this state, by overwhelming majority, voted for right-wing extremism. They saw what happened in the Capitol and learned zero lesson. And you have to take a trip down history lane to say, how is it that a state that was like terror in the heartland and we're all going to come together and we're going to fight these extremists and we're not going to have domestic terrorism, how do they end up not reconciling that? Little kids getting blown up by white nationalists. How does that happen again? Well, let's take a little stroll down history lane. In 2003 to 2011, we had a Democratic governor named Brad Henry. Oklahoma's public education system under his rule, under the time that he was elected, ranked 17th in the nation at the end of Henry's tenure, the highest under any of the 3 governors. And the 3 governors that this is from ChatGPT, is talking about is first it was Brad Henry. We were ranked 17th in education. The next was Mary Fallon, who eviscerated education, and she is a Republican, and she was a big George W. Bush style trickle-down economics, pro-corporate style governor, and now we have Governor Stitt. Brad Henry raised teacher pay, funded health coverage, and protected school budgets during tough economic years, making direct investments in the state's future. Now, fast forward to current. Oklahoma consistently ranks near the bottom in education rankings, frequently cited as 49th or even 50th out of all the U.S. states. This includes rankings based on overall education quality, child well-being, and standardized test scores. So how is it that a state is, before 9/11, was the site of the largest the largest act of terrorism in the entire United States, in this, heartland of the United States of America, falls prey to domestic terrorism? You would think that the singular goal of the citizens of this state after that, after seeing kids' daycares getting blown up, would be to educate the electorate about the dangers of right-wing homegrown extremism. And to the contrary, what did they do? They annihilated the education system. We went from just 2011, not that long ago, ranked 19th to now ranked dead last. And what does that electorate do that was educated during those time periods? They vote by over 60% to a man that just pardoned a bunch of right-wing, homegrown domestic terrorists. This should be a case study on the citizenry of Oklahoma, how they see children killed. And the tears, the heartache, the turmoil that this city went through. I lived in it. I remember when the bomb blew up. The fact that they continue to vote for the same type of mindset that blew up the Alfred P. Murrah building is staggering. But it is because politicians want to lie to the electorate, to prime them for an oligarchical autocratic regime. And what is happening in Oklahoma is the intention of the Heritage Foundation and the Trump administration to happen nationally.
Well, and look no further than Donald Trump starts selling Bibles. The first person to try to put them in every classroom in Oklahoma was Ryan Walters. Ryan Walters, 10 Commandments in the classroom, lies to people in their education curriculum. He wants public funds to pay for private school and says there's no such thing as church and state. He is going straight to the super Christian evangelicals, telling them that porn's everywhere. Drag queens are killing people. I mean, this guy is a nut, and people like to otherize people because they are indoctrinated with Christianity from jump, and it tells them we're better than you. And those people do not look at facts and data. They do not value expertise. What they value is their megachurch preacher that tells them the exact same crap. So it is no surprise to me that Oklahoma would go in the toilet because they do not value education. They value the Bible, and they want to live under all the cruelty of the Bible and completely diminish poor people.
I just think it's a really interesting thing that a state could be the site of a horrific domestic terrorism bombing. We saw it. We lived here. I heard it. And then you see what happens on January 6th. And then you have an electorate that votes for that same kind of mindset. There's a documentary about the Oklahoma City bombing and a woman who lost her granddaughter and daughter in the bombing. And she speaks out really beautifully in the documentary about the dangers of right-wing extremism and how people fall into it. And you see that there was no lesson learned from that. But whenever the bombing anniversary comes around, we have that marathon race and everybody talks about the terror in the heartland and how horrible it was. But I never hear people here reconciling the link between this type of right-wing propaganda and conspiracy theories to what's happening with MAGA. And so you see that what's happening with Trump didn't just happen with Trump. It started a long time ago with the Timothy McVeigh was involved in all of these right-wing, survivalist style cults, and they were networking back then. Proud Boy types.
Right.
And then these are the people that jump right on the Trump administration because they all speak the same language. What did Timothy McVeigh hate? The federal government. What did Trump dismantle? The federal government. What was Timothy McVeigh? A domestic terrorist. What are all the January 6th people that were pardoned? Domestic terrorists. And so the fact that that wasn't reconciled is a real shortcoming on this state. And when you see the drop from ranking of 19 all the way down to 50 from just 2011, which is not that long ago, to now, this is intentional. It is an intentional dumbing down of the electorate by design to use people's faith to emotionally blackmail them and say, oh, well, I'm a religious person, I'm a religious leader, and we want God in the schools. Well, when in actuality, if you were to go to the tenets of the central character of that religion, it would be to sit and comfort those in pain and to not believe in overt nationalism or overt religiosity. And so until we start calling it out and calling out states like Oklahoma that didn't reconcile this, that doubled down on it, it just baffles me every time that bombing anniversary comes around that the majority of the people here saw that iconic photograph of that fireman carry out that baby's body that was charred. And then they go and vote for Donald Trump with all of these people that beat up cops, wanted to hang the vice president. All of those things are linked. And so the desire to tank education in this state is exactly what's heading to all 50 states. This is the MAGA training ground where they train their policies because they have the electorate gone from 17th in the state or 19th in the state down to 50th. So you have a dumbed down electorate that doesn't critically think, which is prime for electing people who propagandize the public. All right, that's all we have for this episode. We dug in the data and 47% of you that view our podcast do not subscribe. So click subscribe as we try to grow this platform, and we'll see you all later.